various activities, bodily activities. But then when we talk about CKD, salt plays a very special role, because whenever you are diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, it is usually associated with either diabetes or long term hypertension with poor control of blood pressures. So, in these conditions, whenever your blood pressures are high or you have edema or water retention, typically they ask you to reduce the amount of salt in your food, which will help in controlling the blood pressures, which is as simple as reducing the salt intake. But we know that the recommended salt on average is not more than 2.5 to 3 grams per day for a normal individual. It's not for somebody who is with CKD. In CKD, usually depending upon the sodium levels, which should typically range between 138 to 140, 142 is a decent number. And we make sure that you're not taking more than 1.5 to 2 grams of salt on an average. So, how do you measure this? And while the extra salt is only to add taste to improve the palatability of the food, all the foods, including the grains, pulses, vegetables, and everything that we eat, has got some amount of sodium in it by nature. So there is this extra sodium is only to enhance the taste and to satisfy our palate. So salt is something, if we can learn to eat as less as possible, will do much good to us in multiple ways. We'll talk about the whites in foods on some other day. But now focusing on salt, we know that whenever we are talking of not more than 1.5 grams of salt in your meal, which means you have to do a salt-free cooking, and you are not adding any salt even in your rice, roti, or any other cereal that you cook, or millets, while cooking. So this salt has to be eliminated because all these grains have got good amount of sodium. So you have to do the entire cooking, including the vegetables, dals, salads, all that you make salt free. Secondly, when you make all this salt free, you also have to do a small exercise of taking 2 grams of salt and dividing it into 4 equal parts. Make small small rolls in a newspaper or a regular paper. Just add that pinch of salt. So 4 pinches would approximately make around 2 grams of salt. 4 to 4.5, 5 pinches of salt. So stick to 4 pinches, lesser the better. So every pinch will go into one meal. So psychologically, you also have the feeling that there is some salt which I can add in my meal while the meal is cooked salt free, so that you know the controlled amount of salt that you have been consuming. This method has been very, very effective. I have seen a lot of my patients doing fantastic with low salt intake and improving their blood pressure levels. So this is one way of doing salt free cooking, rather than saying that yes, I'm adding less salt, because we do not know how less is the salt, and this cooking goes for the whole family. And this cooking is not done separately for the CKD person. So it is ideal that you cook everything salt free. The others might add, but what you require is just a pinch of salt in each of your meal. So remember to go with that pinch of salt, so that you know there is some salt in your meal, and you will not feel devastated that how would I eat without salt. So that is one thing. Second, when you are eating preserved food, as there has been a series on preserved and packaged foods and how bad they can be in terms of sodium. Also remember, in India we have a huge set of pickles, papads, vadiums, and chilies, and all that is marinated, soaked, and sun-dried in lot of salt. All of these are a strict no, unless you are making your own papads without salt. which are made at home with the atta, the gram flours, and adding some spices and doing it without salt is possible when you are roasting and eating and not deep frying. However, the idea is to ensure that there is not too much of salt getting into your food by consuming these preserved long-standing foods. Then there is one another gimmick in the market which talks about low sodium salt. Remember that sodium high is dangerous but low is equally bad. Whenever there is low sodium, there is also a likely chance of having a blackout, disorientation, a kind of delirium, and sometimes extreme fatigue because of low sodium, which is very common among senior citizens. So that time they are also given some sodium tablets to improve their sodium levels. So it goes to that extent. So you have to keep a balance. So how do you do that? So you are not going into very heavy sodium foods. Also at the same time, you are not restricting the sodium to an extent that you're getting into low sodium state. By many of them have come across the low sodium salt. Now I come across this question with so many patients asking, ma'am, we are using low sodium salt, so still my blood pressure is high. Now remember that low sodium salt, what is salt? Salt is sodium chloride. It's as simple as that. And of course it is exposed to some chemicals and made it more whiter, brighter, and all that, and iodized. But if you take plain rock salt or pink Himalayan salt or any other the traditional salts which are exposed lesser to the chemical process, are much better options. All said and done, all salts are safe. It has sodium chloride. But when we talk of low sodium salt, it is definitely replaced by some other chemical, and that is, whenever we say low sodium, it is actually sodium potassium chloride. So it is it is just an exchange. So what are you doing? You are taking more potassium in place of sodium. So such things are coming up, and maybe it is helpful to some, which I am not sure of. But then anything which is disturbing the natural occurrence of any form of food or mineral or element definitely will not go with the natural process of our digestion. It shows up in some form or the other. Like, you have low glycemic index rice, then you have a low glycemic index wheat flour, good diabetic atta, and so many things. But all of these is temporary. You have to build up a habit of getting something into a very natural way of eating so that it does not affect your body greatly, because you're already under stress because of certain health conditions. So remember, there is nothing like low sodium food or a low sodium salt. Just take your normal salt, but ensure that you are not going overboard. Stick to the recommended allowance as per your doctor's advice, and also check for hypertension, regular blood pressure monitoring, and also your edema in foot, under the eyes, or on the abdomen, which talks about water retention because of high sodium intake. And this if you can follow this to a good extent, your blood pressures as well as the body will be free from water retention. I hope this has helped to start taking little of salt in your food, and at the same time relishing your meals and not feeling bad that there is no salt in the meal, and at the same time taking care of your health.